You know that feeling, right? The sky goes dark, you hear that low rumble way off in the distance.
Oh, yeah. For some people, it's kind of exciting, atmospheric even.
But for others, that first clap of thunder, maybe seeing that sudden flash,
Yeah.
it can be genuinely terrifying.
Mm-hmm. And we're not just talking about, being a little bit jumpy.
Exactly. It's way beyond a healthy respect for a powerful storm.
Right. The level of fear we're focusing on today, it can be, well, completely debilitating for some folks.
Absolutely. So we've gathered quite a bit of information to really dig into this specific phobia called astrophobia.
Astrophobia. You might also hear terms like brontophobia, serranophobia.
Tonitrophobia too, I think.
Yeah, that's another one. They all basically point to the same thing. A really significant, intense fear of thunder and lightning.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really understand it, what triggers it, how it affects people, and interestingly, animals too, and crucially, what can actually be done about it.
Okay, so let's start right there. What is astrophobia, fundamentally? It's obviously more than just not liking storms. What's the key difference?
Well, the crucial thing is that it's seen as an abnormal fear, or maybe an unwarranted fear response.
Unwarranted, meaning the fear is way out of proportion to the actual risk.
Precisely. Even if the storm itself is pretty isolated, or maybe not that severe, the fear level is still incredibly high.
Gotcha. So even if someone knows intellectually that they're probably safe inside,
The emotional reaction, the physical fear, it just takes over. It's powerful.
right, that disconnect between the rational brain and the emotional response, that seems key.
And the name itself tells us something, doesn't it?
It does. Astrophobia comes straight from Greek.
Yeah, yeah. Break it down for us.
Sure. Astrap, that means lightning. And phobos, well, many people know that, one, it means fear.
Lightning fear, pretty direct.
Exactly. It highlights the core elements right there in the name.
Okay, so we've got a definition. But what does this actually look like? During a storm, what are the signs someone might be experiencing astrophobia?
Well, it can definitely vary, but there are common symptoms. A lot of them are what you'd expect with any strong phobic reaction, really. Things like trembling, sometimes crying, sweating, a real sense of panic washing over them.
Wow. Physical stuff, too.
Oh, yeah. Nausea is common, sometimes an urgent need to use the bathroom, just this deep feeling of dread, plus a noticeably rapid heartbeat.
That sounds incredibly distressing.
Yeah.
And our sources mentioned some reactions that seem particularly linked to this fear, the storm itself. What stood out there?
Yeah, there are some specific behaviors. One is a really strong need for reassurance from other people. They just need someone there.
Okay.
And interestingly, the anxiety, the symptoms, they often get much worse if the person is alone during the storm.
That makes sense. Isolation must make it feel even scarier.
Totally. And then there are these safety-seeking behaviors. People might actively look for places they feel are more secure inside their own home,
Like where?
hiding under beds, sometimes in closets, or maybe heading down to the basement, even if the storm isn't, a tornado warning or anything like that.
Right. Seeking shelter, even when it's maybe not strictly necessary from a physical safety standpoint, that really shows the fear's intensity.
It really does. And then there's the urge to just block it all out.
Ah, the sound and the light.
Exactly. Covering ears to muffle the thunder, closing curtains tight, shutting windows. It's all about trying to minimize that sensory input, regain some feeling of control.
Okay, now another really interesting point that came up was this intense focus on weather forecasts.
Yes.
It's more than just checking if you need a coat, right?
Oh, absolutely. For someone with astrophobia, checking the weather can become almost hypervigilant.
Hypervigilant, how so?
They might be constantly watching TV weather reports, tracking storms online, basically always on the lookout for the next potential thunderstorm.
It's like they're trying to get ahead of it.
Sort of. It's an attempt to manage the anxiety, to feel prepared, maybe gain a little sense of control over something that feels very unpredictable and scary.
But that constant monitoring, it could really impact daily life, couldn't it?
Definitely. It can get to the point where someone is really hesitant to go outside without checking the forecast meticulously first.
And I read that in extreme cases, this could even lead to
Agoraphobia, potentially, yeah. That broader fear of leaving home, because home feels like the only truly safe place away from potential storms. It really shows how one specific phobia can sometimes spiral.
wow. That really puts into perspective how serious this can be. It makes you wonder, how common is astrophobia? Did our sources give any indication?
Yeah, there was a study mentioned from 2007, I believe, which found astrophobia was actually the third most common phobia in the US at that time.
Third. Really? That's surprisingly high.
It is significant. Now, statistics can change, of course, but it shows it's definitely not a rare condition.
And it affects people across the board,
Yeah.
age-wise.
That's right. It can impact anyone, adults, children.
Okay, but with kids, lots of kids get scared of loud noises, right? How do you tell if it's just a normal childhood fear versus something more like a phobia?
That's a really important distinction. A temporary fear of thunder is pretty common for young children. The guideline mentioned in our sources is that for it to be considered a potential phobia needing attention, the fear should really persist for more than about 6 months.
6 months. Okay, that's a useful marker. So it's about the duration, the fear not fading naturally.
Exactly. It sticks around longer than you'd typically expect.
So if a parent is dealing with a child who's scared during storms, but maybe it hasn't hit that 6-month mark yet, what are some things they can do in the moment?
Well, distraction is often a good first step. Just engaging the child in a fun game, an activity they enjoy, anything to take their mind off the noise outside.
Makes sense. Shift the focus.
Right. Another approach, maybe a bit counterintuitive, is to try and reframe the storm itself. Treat it almost like entertainment.
Entertainment. Like how?
Maybe pointing out the cool patterns of the lightning, counting between the flash and the bang, making it into a sort of game or a natural spectacle rather than just something scary.
Huh. That's an interesting tactic. Okay, but what if the fear is more established? It's gone past childhood, or it's just very intense. What are the treatment options then?
The good news is that astrophobia is definitely treatable. One of the main approaches, and often very effective, is exposure therapy.
Exposure. So, facing the fear. Sounds intense.
It's done very gradually and carefully. It might start with just listening to recordings of thunder at a low volume and maybe watching videos of storms and eventually potentially experiencing mild storms in a safe, controlled way. The idea is to build up tolerance over time.
Right, desensitization. Like building immunity almost, as one source put it.
Exactly that. And alongside exposure, other therapies are really helpful too. Things like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT.
CBT, I've heard of that. How does that apply here?
CBT helps people identify those negative or irrational thoughts they have about storms, challenge them, and then learn healthier ways to cope. Dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, can also be useful, focusing on emotional regulation and distress tolerance.
So changing the thought patterns and learning coping skills.
And part of that is often learning techniques to use during a storm. Things like calming self-talk, reminding yourself you're safe, and using deep breathing exercises to manage the physical anxiety symptoms in the moment.
It sounds like there are real, practical tools people can use. That's really encouraging. Now, we mentioned earlier it's not just humans. Animals get scared too.
Yes, absolutely. Dogs, especially, can show really severe anxiety during thunderstorms.
Really? How common is it in dogs?
The research suggests somewhere between, say, 15 and 30% of dogs might be significantly affected. That's quite a lot.
Wow. Potentially up to a third. And is there science behind that or just observation?
Oh, there's science. Studies have actually measured cortisol levels, the stress hormone, in dogs during and after storms, and yep, they're elevated. It confirms a real physiological stress response.
Poor pups. So what can dog owners do if their pet is terrified of storms?
Well, some of the approaches are actually similar to human therapies. Behavioral stuff like counter conditioning, basically, trying to create a positive association with storm sounds, maybe giving treats or praise when thunder rumbles softly.
Okay, associating with good things.
And desensitization, gradually exposing them to storm sounds at low levels. Then there are anti-anxiety medications that a vet can prescribe for more severe cases.
Medication's okay.
Anything else? There are also things like dog-appeasing pheromones, DAP. They come in diffusers or collars and release synthetic pheromones that can sometimes have a calming effect.
Interesting. Lots of options to explore there. What about cats? Do they get astrophobia too?
It seems to be less common, or at least less commonly reported than in dogs, but yes, cats can definitely be afraid of thunderstorms too.
How do they typically react?
Their main reaction tends to be hiding. You know, finding a quiet, secure spot under the bed, deep in a closet, somewhere they feel safe and hidden.
Ah, so more of a withdrawal response.
Seems like it, yeah.
And the advice for owners is the same as for dogs. How should we act around a scared cat or dog during a storm?
The general advice, interestingly, for any kind of harmless but scary event like storms or fireworks is actually to try and behave normally yourself.
Normally. Not like overly comforting them.
Exactly. Our instinct is often to fuss over them, lots of petting, saying, it's okay, it's okay. But that can sometimes inadvertently reinforce their fear, like you're confirming there is something to be scared of.
I see. So acting calm and normal yourself can signal to them that there's no real danger?
That's the idea. Projecting normalcy can be more reassuring than excessive comforting, counterintuitive as it might seem.
That's a really valuable tip.
Okay.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on astrophobia, what are the main things you think people should take away?
Well, I think the key points are that astrophobia is a real significant fear. It's not just being a bit nervous. It's treatable, which is crucial. It affects both humans and quite a few animals.
Right. And it shows up in lots of ways: anxiety, specific behaviors like hiding, or obsessively checking forecasts.
Exactly. And understanding those signs, knowing it can impact daily life, and importantly, knowing that help is available through therapies and coping strategies. That's really the main message.
Definitely. So thinking about all this, it kind of makes you reflect on fear itself, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, you consider the evolutionary angle. Loud noises, bright flashes, historically, those did often mean danger, right?
Yeah.
Predators, natural disasters.
Sure, there's likely an ancient wiring there, a survival instinct.
But now we have this open understanding. We know most thunderstorms aren't an immediate threat if we're indoors,
Yeah.
and we even have ways to treat that ingrained fear response.
It shows how far we've come in understanding our own minds and emotions.
Yeah. And maybe understanding a specific phobia like this gives us a wider lens on, the whole spectrum of how we and animals respond emotionally to the world. It really makes you think. What other anxieties, maybe less obvious ones, shape our experiences or the experiences of those around us every day? Something to ponder, perhaps?